You ever notice how the people with the least real power always try the hardest to prove they've got it? That's how this whole war started. Right there on my front lawn, Patricia Holloway, head of the HOA, pressing a violation slip against my chest like she was pinning on a sheriff's badge. "Your daughter was loitering again," she said, real smug, loud enough for the neighbors to hear behind their blinds. "This community doesn't tolerate delinquent behavior, Daniel." Then, with that perfect, painted-on smile, she added, "And that bench you keep on the greenway? It's coming down." I looked at her, then at the paper, just letting the silence hang. "Finally," I said, "that bench is protected by the easement, Patricia. It was placed there lawfully, long before you were ever elected to this board." And for the briefest moment, her face lost that color. Just a flicker, but you could see it if you were looking. You know that surge you get when you finally stand up to a bully? Yeah, that happened. I slipped the violation into my jacket, told her calmly, "You picked the wrong family." See, I wasn't just another guy fighting an HOA. I'd spent years as a paralegal before teaching. I knew those bylaws forward and back, where the cracks were, the loopholes, the spots where power gets a little too comfortable. But it wasn't about legal games. That cedar bench, the one Patricia wanted to tear down for aesthetic noncompliance. My late wife's father carved it by hand. It was the last thing he built before he passed. After cancer took her, that bench became this anchor for my daughter Emily and me. It was where they watched the seasons on the lake, where she learned about constellations, and after her mom was gone, it became a lifeline. Emily was 14, just trying to be a normal kid, going to the pool with friends, when Patricia cornered her, accused her of vandalism, treated her like a criminal, even hinted she'd have to prove she wasn't hiding anything. That's the moment my blood really ran cold. This wasn't about rules. This was about control, about humiliation. As I walked home, Patricia's smile still in my mind, I knew what I had to do. I'd spent my career teaching people how to push back against overreach, how systems fall apart when someone stands up and refuses to play along. And believe me, this neighborhood was about to get a crash course. The clubhouse, that was Patricia's stage, walls lined with framed photos of old HOA presidents, bulletin boards crammed with warnings, each stamped with her initials. That night, I watched from the lobby as two sets of neighbors, the Dawsons and the Hensons, pleaded with the receptionist over petty fines, roses the wrong color, a plastic kiddie pool called a hazard. They looked worn out, defeated. It clicked. Patricia wasn't just after me. She'd made a sport of picking off anyone outside her little circle, stacking up violations until people stopped fighting back. That's the pattern. Find the isolated, make them feel alone, and then squeeze. But I wasn't alone, and neither were they. I sat at the bench that night, under the old sycamore, with my notebook, writing it all down, every fine, every story. I watched Emily walk over, headphones slung around her neck, still carrying that humiliation Patricia had tried to burn into her. I told her, "They want us quiet, but that's not us. Not now, not ever." I went back to work at the high school the next day, but my head stayed at Willow Bend. All day, while grading essays, I kept turning it over, how every authority has boundaries, and the minute you push them past those lines, they fall. A colleague, seeing the HOA papers in my bag, laughed. "Planning a revolt?" "Something like that," I said. But this time, it wasn't a joke. After school, I started knocking on doors, the Dawsons, the Hensons, anyone with a story. They all had one. Every story was more fuel. Patricia was bold, sure, but boldness leaves tracks. And tracks leave evidence. It was Caleb Rose, the night security guard, who gave me the missing piece. He was there the night Patricia accused Emily, pressed in close by the pool fence, looking anywhere but at me. When I said, "You saw what happened," you know it wasn't right. He just nodded, tight-lipped, guilt all over his face. She told me if I didn't follow orders, I'd be out. That's how power works, until someone finally decides they can't carry it anymore. Days later, Patricia doubled down. A letter under my door, 10 days to remove the bench or face fines. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter, thinking about my wife, about Emily, about how easy it is for people like Patricia to use fear as a weapon. She held her compliance forum at the lake, parading as if she was saving the neighborhood, when really it was a show, calling my bench an eyesore, a tripping hazard. But for the first time, I saw doubt in the crowd. People started whispering, shifting. The cracks were starting. That's when I took the fight downtown, straight to the county records office, and found the original plat maps. Black and white proof the greenway was a permanent easement, benches specifically allowed. Everything Patricia had done was built on sand. The next day, I gathered the neighbors, showed them the clause. The Dawsons, the Hensons, people who'd been quiet for years. They lit up, hope creeping back into their voices. But Patricia wasn't done. She dropped a newsletter in every mailbox, painting me as some rogue troublemaker, even dragging Emily's name into it. That was the moment I realized this was no longer just about a bench, or a fine, or a memory. It was about whether we let fear win, or whether we stood up. So I called a meeting, my own, in the high school auditorium, Thursday night. Sent out flyers by hand, told every neighbor, you deserve to hear the truth, not just her story. That night, the auditorium filled up, bleachers packed with retirees, parents, kids. Patricia made her usual show, said I was misrepresenting the documents, that the board had the power. I didn't even argue. I just laid out the proof, the easement clause. For the first time, people listened. And then Caleb stood up, right there, shaking, but loud enough for everyone. She pressured me. She humiliated a child. I let it happen because I was afraid. But she doesn't have that authority. Not by the bylaws, not by the law. The silence after that was electric. Patricia tried to claw it back, but the crowd had already turned. After the meeting, neighbors came up, offered support, asked what was next. I told them, we weren't just fighting for a bench anymore. We were fighting for the soul of the neighborhood. Next stop, Marcus's law office, my brother. He looked over the papers, the affidavit, Caleb's statement, and said, you've got her. Not just on the bench, but defamation, overreach, all of it. For the first time, the plan wasn't just defense. It was offense. We started gathering signatures, affidavits, neighbors lining up to put their names on it, telling their own stories. On Saturday, I set up a table at the playground, papers stacked high. The Dawsons signed first, then the Hensons, then more. One by one, silence broke and became testimony. Even Caleb, finally, met my eyes and said, I'll be there when it counts. We packaged everything, sent it to the board with a letter of intent. Not a lawsuit yet, but close. And the neighborhood started to buzz. Patricia blasted back, called it all a stunt, tried to smear me again. But each new attack just looked more desperate. At the church that week, I met with residents who still doubted. Laid it all out. What the bylaws actually said, what the law protected, what the board could and couldn't do. For the first time, I saw people start to believe they had a say. Then came the board meeting. Gym packed wall to wall, Patricia clinging to the podium, the whole crowd charged. She tried the same speech about disruptors, but the room erupted, booing, people calling her out. I laid out the plat map, the affidavits, and Caleb stepped up, voice cracking but clear. She ordered me to search a 14-year-old. That's not enforcement. That's abuse. The gym exploded, neighbors shouting for Patricia to step down, demanding a vote. Marcus filed the injunction, laid it all out in front of everyone. Patricia's smile finally cracked. For the first time, she didn't have the room. Court came quick after that. In front of the judge, Marcus went through it line by line. The bench was legal. The fines were overreach. Caleb testified, this time with no fear left. The judge didn't even hesitate. The bench stays. The fines get tossed. Patricia's found liable for defamation, ordered to step down. Afterwards, out on the courthouse steps, people hugged, cried, shook my hand, clapped Caleb on the back. Emily looked at me with tears in her eyes. Not sad ones, the good kind. We sat on that bench together that evening, sun setting on the lake, and she drew every line of grain, every mark her granddad's hand had made. You did it, Dad, she said. No, I told her, voice catching. We did. The bench stood strong, a little worn, a little rough, but solid, just like the truth that finally won. So, let me ask you, is your neighborhood run by fear or by community? Where do you draw your line? Drop your story in the comments, and let's talk about what justice looks like, because I promise you, you're not alone.